So whenever we talk about the next Animal Crossing game, one of the biggest debates that I see in my comment section tends to be when it'll actually release. Everyone has their own opinions about when they think the next Animal Crossing game will come out. I've noticed there's a big trend, however, of a lot of people thinking that the next Animal Crossing game will still be quite a long way off, due to certain things that have happened in the past. However, there's actually a lot of evidence to suggest this isn't the case, and whilst we never know exactly what Nintendo is going to do or plan, there's some good evidence to suggest that the next Animal Crossing game can release a lot sooner than you might think. Now, personally, I'm not entirely sure exactly when the next Animal Crossing game is going to come out. However, my guess would be it's probably not going to happen this year. However, that doesn't necessarily mean we won't hear something about it. After all, the Switch 2 was just recently announced and the future is looking bright. I wanted to make this video to try and change the conversation around when the next Animal Crossing game can release, as I tend to see the same arguments used often for why it won't be releasing anytime soon. And using evidence, I want to put a more positive spin on that. Now, it's been 5 years since Animal Crossing New Horizons first released, which seems like quite a decent amount of time for a new Animal Crossing game to come out. However, something that happened in the past has a lot of people believing that we will not see a new Animal Crossing game anytime soon, and this was the amount of time it took New Horizons to release after the launch of Animal Crossing New Leaf, the previous game which was on the 3DS. Animal Crossing New Leaf first launched in November 2012, which is such a long time ago now it feels like, over 12 years at this point. And Animal Crossing New Horizons released, as I'm sure a lot of you remember, on March the 20th, 2020. That is over 7 years, which is a long time. And given this long release window, I can understand why a lot of people kind of take this as the amount of time it takes for Animal Crossing games to come out. However, historically, that just is not the case at all. For example, Animal Crossing New Leaf of course came out in November 2012, and the game before it, Animal Crossing City Folk, came out in November 2008, so only a 4-year gap. The game before that came out in 2005, so only a 3-year gap. Historically, this has been the trend, but for some reason, the gap between New Leaf and New Horizons seems to be the one that is stuck. However, there's probably a big reason why this gap was so long that I think a lot of people are forgetting about, and that's the fact that the console between the 3DS, which New Leaf was on, and the console New Horizons was on the Switch, happened to be the Wii U. Now, to Nintendo and a lot of people, this was considered a failed console. Don't get me wrong, it had some absolutely amazing games on it, but it didn't really live up to the standards that the previous consoles had. So it seems very likely that the existence of the Wii U actually could have hindered the release of Animal Crossing New Horizons, which maybe originally could have even released on this console. Now that is speculation on my part, but I don't think it's entirely untrue, given the Wii U would have probably been out for a lot longer and the Switch would have taken longer to release if it had been a very successful console. But since it didn't do so well, Nintendo released the Switch perhaps a lot sooner than we were expecting. And another really important point with the Wii U is let's take a look at the one Animal Crossing game, a spin-off, which did release on the Wii U. This was Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival, which is the worst rated and worst selling Animal Crossing game by miles. This game was absolutely hated, so that probably didn't encourage Nintendo to want to add another Animal Crossing game, aka New Horizons, in at that point. And we know that whilst this whole Wii U stuff was going on, New Horizons was actively in development. The developers have confirmed this themselves. So to me that seems like a perfectly logical reason why that gap was so long compared to usual. And the Switch hasn't had any of those problems at all, so I don't see why a gap like that would need to happen again. However, if we want to get really technical for a moment, there wasn't even that much of a gap if you consider the fact that we got all of these Animal Crossing spin-off games between New Leaf and New Horizons, so there was a lot of Animal Crossing content at that point. Pocket Camp came out in 2017 and New Horizons was only 3 years after that. It's hard to know whether Nintendo themselves sees Pocket Camp as a sort of mainline game or a spin-off. Of course, we all see it as a spin-off, but perhaps they thought it was enough content to tide people over, so no real need to rush with New Horizons. This time around, we haven't seen anything since the 2.0 update and the Happy in Paradise DLC. That was probably as close as we would get to a spin-off within this era, but it's still a part of New Horizons. Something else has changed this time around too, given the fact that New Horizons is by far the most successful Animal Crossing game, with absolutely massive amounts of copies and systems sold. Even to this day, the game has still broken records in Japan, which is just crazy to think about. Considering that Nintendo is a business first and foremost, and profits are an important part of the whole process, it's undoubtable that they'll want to release a new Animal Crossing game sooner rather than later, as it's a big seller. And given we've actually seen them do a lot of interesting things with Animal Crossing recently, like put out new collaborations and tons of new merch and major worldwide events, it's very clear to me they know how popular it is and how much people would love to see a new Animal Crossing game release, and certainly not wait another 7 years in total for it to come out. And most importantly, the Nintendo Switch era has basically come to an end, or at least it is in the process of ending, and the Switch 2 was recently announced, which means we actually now can see a new Animal Crossing game. In case you didn't know, mainline Animal Crossing games tend to only be one per console, so it was unlikely that Nintendo would release the successor to New Horizons on the Switch itself. But given we're getting this new console in 2025, that means we finally have a realistic chance of seeing a new Animal Crossing game released for it. In reality, the most we probably would have seen on the original Nintendo Switch was some kind of port of an older game or a spin-off, not something entirely new. I also want to address a few other arguments I see as to why the next Animal Crossing game might take a long time to release. Another big one tends to be that these games take a long time to make, and that is very true. And of course, we don't want Nintendo to rush them either. But when you look at the gap between past Animal Crossing games, you can tell that's generally what they were able to do. New Leaf only took about 4 years to come out after City Folk, yet it's highly regarded as the best Animal Crossing game. So I don't see why the next Animal Crossing game couldn't do the same thing. They also won't need to start over from scratch like they've had to do with New Horizons. After all, the jump from the 3DS to Wii U/Switch type software was a pretty big one. So going from the Switch to the Switch 2 will allow them to reuse a lot from New Horizons, something they've done with other big Nintendo games like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. And one more argument I see a lot is that they might actually be working on a Splatoon game instead, and that's something I really doubt. A lot of people tend to think that Splatoon affects the development of Animal Crossing because the same teams work on it, and whilst I'm sure there might be some overlap, it's important to remember that Nintendo is a big company, and they have worked on both franchises simultaneously. Whilst they were releasing Animal Crossing New Horizons, they were working on multiple spin-off Animal Crossing games, as well as working on multiple Splatoon games, so they're easily able to handle lots of different projects. Now, I don't want to set anyone up with too unrealistic expectations. If I'm being entirely honest, I don't think we're going to see a new Animal Crossing game released within this year. My best bet is that we will see some Animal Crossing news this year in the form of some kind of Nintendo Direct, as we've typically done in the past. This might just be a minor teaser saying the next Animal Crossing game is in the works, or a full-blown trailer, who knows, but I think we will hear something like that. However, I don't think the next Animal Crossing game will release until 2026. That'll be 6 years after the release of Animal Crossing New Horizons, which, for people who kind of feel like the New Leaf date is still set in stone, that's closer to the 7 years anyways. Despite all of this, we never know exactly what Nintendo is going to do. They can be incredibly unpredictable. But I want to try and be a bit more positive and excited about the prospects of the future, especially with the Switch 2 announced. I'll keep you up to date on whatever Nintendo does with the next Animal Crossing game, so make sure to stay tuned. Be sure to let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, and what sorts of things you'd like to see in the next Animal Crossing game too. If you made it to the end, be sure to comment Bob's Gang so I know you did. If you enjoyed, leave a like and subscribe and turn on notifications for more.